The principles of strength training. Introduction. To get stronger, you've got to train. This shouldn't be a surprise. But how exactly should you train? Is it enough to just do random exercise and hope you progress? It might be enough for some time, but eventually you'll realize that structuring your training in a particular way will help you progress much faster. Okay, so what is this particular way of structuring your training? One that follows all 7 training principles: specificity, overload, fatigue management, SRA or stimulus recovery and adaptation, variation, phase potentiation, and individualization. These 7 principles govern the training process, and since strength is built by training, you have to understand these principles if you want to get as strong as possible. However, there's one small nuance. These principles are not equally important. They're ranked by their importance, which means that the first principles are much more important than the latter ones. To illustrate this, here's a visual example. Specificity is the most important principle, as it encompasses all others. Overload is slightly less important. Fatigue management is even less important, and so on. This means that getting the first few principles right is much more important than getting the latter ones right. So if you're a beginner, I'd recommend you to just focus on the first 3 principles for now. This will set you up for years of progress, and once you're ready to expand your knowledge and make your training more complex, you can start applying the latter principles. Okay, but where did I get all of these principles? Did I just pull them out of my ass? No, I got them from the book Scientific Principles of Strength Training, which dives extremely deep into the principles of strength training for powerlifting. If you want to buy a copy and read it for yourself, I'll leave a link in the description. However, there's one problem. As you can see from the videos on your screen, I'm not a powerlifter. I'm a calisthenics athlete, which is why I decided to create a video series about the principles of strength training and how to apply them to calisthenics. If this sounds like something you're interested in, then stick around, as you probably won't find information like this elsewhere. Okay, so now that I've introduced you to the principles of strength training, let's start by defining strength so you have a clear understanding what this video series is about. Strength is the ability to produce force, which can be put into 3 categories: maximal strength, basic strength, and strength endurance. This video series is going to be mostly focused on the first 2, as that's what strength essentially is: the ability to produce high levels of force at low reps. The more reps you do, the less weight you lift, and the further away you drift from typical strength training. Now, before we go any further, we also have to differentiate strength training from hypertrophy and resistance training. The goal of hypertrophy training is to build muscle, and that's best achieved with sets of 5 reps or more. Sure, there is some overlap between the 2, but in most cases, they're 2 different training modalities, as strength is built with low reps and heavy weights, while muscle is built with higher reps and lighter weights. Resistance training, on the other hand, is an umbrella term for any kind of training in which your muscles contract against an external resistance. Sure, strength training falls into resistance training, but so does hypertrophy, endurance, power, and mobility training. In short, strength training improves your ability to produce high levels of force. Hypertrophy training builds muscle, and resistance training is an umbrella term that incorporates both. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's talk about what strength is made out of. Strength has 4 components: muscle size, muscle architecture, neural drive, and technique. Muscle size is the cross-sectional area of a muscle. The bigger your biceps, the more force they can produce. Muscle architecture is the structural design of a muscle, or in other words, how its fibers are arranged relative to the tendon. Strength training literally changes the structural design of your muscles, aligning the force vectors better to produce force in the exact exercise you're doing, even if the muscle size remains the same. Neural drive is your nervous system's ability to recruit the muscle and make it contract as hard as it can. This is a huge part of strength training, as your muscles don't contract by themselves. Your nervous system tells them to. Think of it like this. At the beginning, your nervous system quietly whispers to your muscles, which is why they don't contract as hard. But as you improve your neural drive, your nervous system starts screaming at your muscles, and they end up contracting harder than ever before. And finally, technique is how efficiently you produce force in a given exercise. Even if your muscles are big, their architecture is solid, and your neural drive is strong, some of that strength can get lost in translation if your technique is poor. For example, if your scapulars are not depressed and retracted when doing the front lever, you might not maximize the force output simply because your lats have much less leverage. Okay, so now that you have a basic understanding of strength training, let's end this video here and see you next time for the first principle: specificity. Peace!